Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how I sculpt Fleur-de-lis on the side of a shoulder guard, but obviously this same technique could be used for anywhere you want to put this emblem. Now I've been sculpting quite a few of these recently on account of my homebrew Primaris chapter, the Chevaliers. They're Bretonnian themed, which has meant, yeah, I've been doing more than I'd like to have done, that's for sure, but hopefully I've sort of mastered it, so to speak. So the first thing we're going to need to do is roll a small amount of green stuff into a sausage shape, and this is about 3 to 4 millimeters, and we're going to gently press it onto the top middle of the guard there. Now it's only very lightly pressed on. If you press too firmly, the green stuff will probably get stuck to your finger. So we're then going to use, if I can move it a little closer so you can see, there we are. We're then going to use this sort of rubber tip sculpting tool. One side is kind of bladed, the other end is rounded, and we're going to use the rounded end just to press it onto the guard. Now because this is rubber, it doesn't stick to the tool, and we can sort of apply it firmly onto the shoulder. Now after that, we're going to start using some of the flatter edges to push this into a diamond shape, and then use the back of the rounded part just to flatten it down each time, and we're going to keep manipulating this until it becomes the sort of diamond we want it to be. Now forgive me, because normally I have this quite close to my face, and now I've got obviously a camera between me and what I'm doing. Always adds an extra level of difficulty. But hopefully you can gauge obviously what I'm trying to do. Each time I push it out, I'm using the back of it just to chisel that point back again. There we go. I'll probably continue. Hopefully that was all in shot. I've been focusing on this, not the camera. Yeah, I'll probably continue altering this until I'm confident that it's sort of in the center and in the shape I want. But yeah, carry on sort of pushing it into that diamond shape. If you want, and you are using one of these tools, you can use the sort of back to press in and make a small indentation if you want, and then again at the top. That is of course if you want that extra level of detail, and then you can kind of use the sharper edges to sort of run that line in if you wanted to. But then again I will go back, sort of press against all four sides just to return it to that diamond shape. There we go. And that's it, that's the center of it done. I'm going to put this down now, leave it to cure properly, and then come back to it in a second. Well, for you guys at least. So for the next step, we're going to need to try and do the bottom part just underneath here. And we're going to need to take a very small amount of green stuff. You can see just how small that is. We're going to carefully stick it just underneath. Now if I'm honest, I think that's probably a little bit too much. So let me just push it back down again. And yeah, as you see, once we've flattened that down, it's taking up a little bit too much room. So I'm going to use the sharp hobby knife here just to take away a little bit from it, and again from underneath. So we're aiming for a little triangle just underneath it, and once we've got that, we want to put two sort of notches into it. Now the middle one will become sort of like the opposite part of this. These two side pieces, I'm going to use my rubber tipped sort of bladed tool to try and curl it round. I'm going to try and flatten out the middle one, then pinch it into a point. And then with these side bits, I'm going to use the rubber tip. This is where the rubber tools really come in quite useful, because they're flexible and you can really bend the green stuff round. So looks like the left hand side is slightly longer than the right. So I'm going to use this hobby knife again. Just take a little bit away, then with a rubber tip tool, if you're ever watching my videos and you realise I stop halfway through a sentence, it's because my mind seems to only process one thing at a time. I'm either sculpting and painting or talking to you guys. So I just need to drop this down a little bit more. At this scale, I'm not aiming for it to be perfect, and I'll probably neaten it a little bit once I've stopped filming. But there we go. So yeah, try and make a small triangle underneath, put two notches in, and then use one of these bladed tools to start pulling the two sides outwards, and you can hook it from underneath and curl it upwards, and then just use the sort of back of the curved side just to push the middle one down, and then sort of point the bottom of it. So there we go. That's step 2. So the next step is to do either side of the fleur-de-lis. For that we're going to need a small amount of green stuff, sort of pinched and rolled into quite a small sausage shape. You can just about see there. And as you roll it, one side is going to be thicker than the other. So I just want to pinch the thicker end into that groove, and then with my thumb kind of curl a little bit of it downwards. Now with the bladed tool, I'm going to try and use the rounded side to hook it up, and then try and pat it down. And then hook it up and try and pat it down. Now I can use the edge of it to push in between the centre part and this curled part, and then I can use the rounded side to add a bit of curl into the middle. Now the first one you do, it's not so bad, it's just the second one, trying to get it mirrored the other side. So that's kind of taken a shape that is pretty decent pretty quickly, but knowing what the rest of my fleur-de-lis are like, I want to try and push it upwards just a little bit. Now if you are fairly new to sculpting, obviously the tools do need to be wet to prevent the green stuff sticking. The rubber tools fare a little bit better than the metal tools, but even still you do need it wet. But be mindful of how watery, or how wet rather, you make the part, because if it's too much water it will actually seep underneath the green stuff, lift it off from the part, and then it will just come off with the tool. It's going to be annoying. I'm just going to use the end of it just to try and make it a little bit more curved. Didn't look too bad, but there we are. Now I'm going to let that cure and then do the other side. It's tempting to do both of them together, but I just know from experience that as you're trying to work on this one, chances are you put your finger in the other side and have to start all over again. So yeah, bear with me just a moment. I'll let this cure overnight and then I'll come back and do the other side in a second for you. So now comes the tricky part of trying to replicate the left hand side now. I'm not going to lie, I don't particularly enjoy this part of sculpting Fleur-de-lis, but I'm just going to try and roll out a bit of green stuff, try and gauge how much I might need. If there's too much, it's not too bad because I can always cut bits of it away. If there's not enough, that does become a bit of an issue because it's harder to add when you've started getting it into the shape you like. So where's my bladed tool? Let's just wet it again. I'm going to try and push this arch upwards, push this side downwards. I'm going to use the back to try and curl it in there. If you can hear any weird noises in the background, I don't know, there's some sort of storm passing overhead. There's an awful lot of wind out there, like not sure the fence is going to be in the same position when I wake up in the morning, sort of wind. Just curl that round. I think I've got a little bit too much green stuff. And it's the tricky part of doing it in 2 different evenings. Effectively, just use the different edges of this tool, curl round. I do think I've got a little bit too much in that centre, so let me just use the hobby knife to cut away some of the interior here. The problem, you do kind of ruin the work you've done, but alright, let's see how that works. So make the tools wet again. Slowly getting there. Apologies if you're watching this and I'm not really giving you any decent advice. Unlike painting I can describe what I'm doing, but with sculpting it's kind of like you just got to keep poking it until it's in the position you want. So hopefully just knowing the stages that I use to try and make this, so like how I started with the centre part and then did the underneath, hopefully that alone is enough to just blow off some of that excess water, and that enough alone rather is enough to help you guys out. Just want to curl this in, so it's almost there, but I think the left hand side does need to be pushed outwards a little bit more. Let's get rid of all that water, sorry. So that's not too bad. All of the fleur-de-lis in this army, every shoulder guard is slightly different because I can't sculpt things identically each time. But I think there comes a point where you go, you know what, my old man used to say, a blind man will be pleased to see it, and I think that's what I've got to settle for sometimes. So yeah, one little step now tomorrow evening where I just do the little band running across the middle, but fairly happy with that so far. So the last little bit now is to add the banding around the middle, and we're going to need just a really small bit of green stuff now. And very carefully stick it into the middle, like so, and then I'm going to use one end of the metal tool just to sort of position it make sure it is actually stuck to the green stuff and it's not just going to come off with the rubber tool. And then I'm going to use the flat end, flat side of this bladed tool just to neaten the top and bottom of it. And I can use the rounded edge just to poke in that side. Now sometimes I can use this sort of edge of the tool to run a line in the middle. If you wanted it, then just use that flat edge just to push it back down so the top and bottom is flat again. And there we go. Once it's focusing, that's how I sculpt Fleur-de-lis. Not particularly perfect up close, but once you've got some paint on it, it's it's fine, tabletop standard. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.